Welcome to episode number 8 of Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa. This is a follow-up to a story I had authored in December of 2019 that was published by the Baltimore Post-Examiner. In the early morning hours of August 9, 2018, detectives with the Vice Unit of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, aided by the SWAT team, conducted a search warrant at the Las Vegas residence of Jesus Carvajal, which culminated in the arrest of Mr. Carvajal, who was then charged with impersonating a police officer, several counts of sexual assault, and kidnapping. Jesus Carvajal spent almost 3 weeks in the Clark County Detention Center and another 2 months on house arrest. The problem was, Jesus Carvajal was an innocent man who was wrongly arrested and jailed for crimes that he did not commit. The charges against Jesus Carvajal were later dismissed. Another man, Tommy Lee Provost, was later charged with the crimes. On Monday, August 10, 2020, Las Vegas attorneys Michael Mcavoyamaya and Timothy Revero, representing Jesus Carvajal, filed a civil rights violation lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the Clark County District Attorney's Office in the United States District Court for the District of Nevada. The complaint alleges that Vice detectives misrepresented facts in the warrant application for Carvajal's arrest, failed to disclose material evidence and facts known by the officers to the issuing judge, and concealed exculpatory evidence for months that resulted in Carvajal's wrongful arrest and confinement in violation of his constitutional rights. The complaint also alleges that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department has a policy and practice of concealing police misconduct. Please refer to the screenshots in this video for further information. Right now, here is a video clip that was posted on Facebook last month by Jesus Carvajal, followed by my recorded interview with Las Vegas attorneys Michael Mcavoyamaya and Timothy Revero.
My name is Jesus Carvajal. I'm going to try to make this as short as possible because my case is pretty complex. But you could go into the Baltimore Post-Examiner article made by Doug Poppa. He did a pretty awesome job. There's a lot of detail on what happened to me. And actually there's more stuff that's been uncovered since then. But on August 9th, 2018, pretty much pulled out of my home by sound grenades and flashbangs in my underwear. My home was ransacked for 2 hours. No information was given to me until after the fact when the detective told me that he was charging me with multiple counts of impersonating a police officer, multiple counts of sexual assault, and I believe it was assault with a deadly weapon. Total like about 7 or 8 felonies. I was paraded into CCDC in my underwear, and that's where the humiliation started. Then that following morning, a few hours from that morning actually, my face was plastered on national TV and in Mexico, calling me a rapist, really. Saying that I was impersonating a police officer and sexually assaulting sex workers. My life was completely destroyed. I lost my job while I was in CCDC. I used to be a dispatcher/supervisor for a company that works directly under Amazon as a delivery service provider. A lot of the people that I trusted, that I cared for in this town, and even back in my hometown in LA, turned their back on me, including family members. The humiliation, even to this day, is unbearable. All due to lies and information being altered and information being hidden. Because in reality, all they had was just the color of my skin. I matched the description of a dark-skinned Latino mixed with Filipino, a dark-skinned Latino mixed with Hawaiian, and a light African American. And on the lineup, I was the only one that matched that description. Part Afro-Cuban and Mexican. For those that don't know, Cuba has a lot of influence through Africa due to the slave trade and everything. Therefore, there's a lot of Cubans that have African in them that are a darker shade of brown. And they use that against me in the fact that I own firearms and I train and I used to play professional paintball and, and they just compiled, I don't know how, whoever signed the warrant, they didn't look into all the red flags. But the person was smaller, cut. I'm taller. I was 280 pounds, which is a big difference. My car didn't match the description. My car wasn't even working at the time. Nothing really tied. I was left behind after I was exonerated. I had to reach out to the media myself to let them know that I was tired of looking at my face and those bad articles. There's still some bad articles out there that haven't been changed. I lost, like I said, my job. I lost my car. I'm in debt. I lost my home. It's just me and my dogs now. Renting a living room space in a one-bedroom apartment where we're getting bit by bugs all the time, and a bad neighborhood. And no one is fighting for me, you could say. No one wants to fight for me because this town is small and everyone's scared of LVMPD and the DA. Even though there was a lot of negligence, they withheld information, they altered stuff, they lied under oath. Yet, I'm pushing to try to get my record expunged. I'm glad I helped to push AB 267, which was a bill that I testified for, but it doesn't help me because I wasn't convicted. But I hope no one gets guts to go through what I go through, but it's going to happen, and I hope this bill helps them. And, counseling, being on self-quarantine for 2 years now, I don't go out much. I do my regular routines, which is work in the store, but I can count with both of my hands and not all my fingers how much times I've actually gone out to try to enjoy myself, because people have recognized me, But yeah, like I said, going to the Baltimore Post-Examiner, read that article, and I hope that more people look into people like myself that have survived and what we're going through, because people don't understand that it's tough.
11th, 2020. I'm on the phone with Las Vegas attorney Michael Mcavoyamaya. How you doing, Mike?
Also, Timothy Revero. This is Doug Poppa.
And who's the other attorney there?
Hey, Doug. Tim here.
And what's your last name, sir?
It's Revero, R-E as in Echo, V as in Victor, E as in Echo, R-O.
Okay. I have received a copy of the complaint you filed with the U.S. District Court yesterday, reference to Jesus Carvajal's lawsuit. Can you explain briefly to my audience what that encompasses?
It is a civil rights complaint pursuant to 1842 U.S.C. 1983, I believe. It is a civil rights action. Jesus' civil rights were violated egregiously by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the Clark County District Attorney. It is our belief that during the investigation of the crimes Jesus was ultimately arrested for, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department was seeking to deflect away from the FBI investigation that was into the department at the time, involving Vice Unit detectives, in part having sex with prostitutes in the Las Vegas area, and that because of the investigation, they were just looking for someone to pin the allegations that of numerous prostitutes in the area that they had been sexually assaulted by a person claiming to be a vice officer. And so that resulted in a very hasty and bad investigation into the matter, and they just decided to cut corners and make misrepresentations to the judge that issued the search warrant against him and the judge that ultimately heard his bail request and his own recognizance release request, and that resulted in him being not only unlawfully, arrested, his property searched and seized, and unlawfully in prison, and his entire life has been turned upside down. And because of these, pretty serious violations of our client's constitutional rights, the county and the city of Las Vegas should pay.
Okay.
To give this man his life back, because his entire life has been ruined, and he had nothing, no priors, no anything. The I mean, Jesus is a good man. He's a manager at an Amazon distributor. He, was a model, was relatively speaking a model citizen. And, this just destroyed his entire life.
Right. I interviewed Mr. Carvajal Jesus last year when I did the story on him. And I want to bring something up, too. Former Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Officer Gavin Vesp, VESP, was a licensed private investigator who was hired by Jesus's first attorney. And he uncovered much of the stuff that I put in my story about the negligence and the misconduct that occurred during the investigation that led to Jesus's arrest and, well, prior to his arrest, the execution of the search warrant on his house. Is Mr. Vesp cooperating with you on this or not on this part of it?
He is not. He has not been willing to speak to anybody about his involvement in the case. Since a meeting between Wilson and the prior attorney, Lance Hendrick, who I'd like to say on the record, and I would like you to put on the record, I believe that Lance is a great attorney. I mean, he did a bang-up job in Carvajal's criminal case, and I can't speak as to why he was not interested in pursuing the civil part of it, but Vesp has kind of just refused to speak to anybody about the case since that meeting between Hendrick, Vesp, and Wilson, and so
right. When I was doing my investigation into Jesus's complaint, when I did the story last year, it was alleged by some people I was talking to that Mr. Vesp was actually getting, I hate to say, pressure or heat from members of the police department because of his work on this case. Do you hear anything like that involving that or not?
I have heard things like that. I can't confirm it at this time. I mean, eventually we hope to get, Mr. Vesp on the record and see what he has to say about those things.
Right, because
this time, I mean, I do not know. I don't know if it was pressure. I don't know what, really, what it was. So until we have an affirmative, knowledge of evidence that exists that demonstrates that, I mean, I can't say whether that is the case or not. What I can say is that, after that meeting, essentially Jesus was given, an ultimatum. Either, the state was going to oppose and delay the sealing of his record, with this, or, if he pursued the attorney's fees motion that Lance had filed. And ultimately, because of employment reasons, as I'm sure you can understand, having this allegation out there that you're, a rapist is
right.
going to hinder your ability to get your life back together. And so ultimately, Jesus, decided to pull that motion after that meeting with Wilson.
Okay, because Gavin's Mr. Vesp investigative report I thought was outstanding. I mean, he did a hell of a job on that, on the stuff that he uncovered.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
agree.
Yeah, it was very detailed, and I put some of that in my first story. Some of that will be on screenshots when I do this podcast on what we're talking about here today. Let me ask you a question so the listeners will understand this. Why did you file a lawsuit in federal court versus district court from the state of Nevada? What is the difference, and why do you do that?
Well, I mean, number one, the damages are capped in state court. So, that's one thing. Number two, 1983 actions are limited to federal court, and they involve, when there is a, constitutional violation like the one that is like what has occurred here, violations of due process, violations of right, to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. Those things typically go forward in federal court.
Okay, so basically, basically the lawsuit is a federal civil rights lawsuit because the people alleged in the complaint violated his civil rights by arresting him when they shouldn't have. In essence, is that true?
And yeah, and the violations are pretty clear. They misrepresented facts to the judge that issued the search warrant to arrest him and search his property. So, it's pretty unmistakable, misrepresentations that were made. And so, yeah, that's why we felt very comfortable, bringing the case and making the allegations as they are.
Okay. Now, in federal court, I believe in state court, I don't know if the number is correct. I heard there's about a $200,000 cap on the police department being held responsible in a civil suit. And you're saying that in a federal civil rights suit that there is no cap on that?
Yes.
Okay. That's, because I know a lot of people have been asking me on the emails I got this morning on that. So anything else you guys want to say? Because I'm going to go ahead and use this in the podcast when I do it tonight or tomorrow on this case.
No, I think that's it. I mean, we feel pretty strongly about this because, this is a case where, essentially the police and the district attorney's office and some, corrupt Metro detectives all conspired to not only take away our client's liberty, but then, sweep it under the rug, essentially, when Mr. Carvajal attempted to regain his attorney's fees from, this wrongful arrest. So, just kind of to add that, and then not only was it the wrongful arrest, it was just the biggest deal. I know Mike touched on it, but it was the continued fraudulent actions of, the DA's office that, in concert with the detectives that sort of kept him there. And so it wasn't just one thing; it was a continuing action, that pattern that sort of led to this injustice.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question before we go. I see in the complaint where you're bringing up some of the stuff on Marlon Brown, who was convicted and is in jail now. He was the owner of the Top Notch Unlicensed Club. And you're bringing up some stuff about Judge Tobiason's allegations about her giving information to Metro on illegal vice activities that wasn't followed up. What is a Marnell, if I'm saying it right, what is a Marnell suit in reference to that? Is that
Yeah, a Marnell liability claim is it's a municipal liability claim. So just because the county or city, employs a tortfeasor doesn't make the county or city liable. Now they still defend, the people who are the tortfeasors. In this case, the individual named defendant. But to actually get to establish that the county is liable as a defendant as well, you have to allege that there is a policy and practice within the municipal subdivision, like the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department or the Clark County DA, and that policy, practice, or custom is what resulted in the constitutional violations. And so here, we have seen corrupt police, actions of police and prosecutors repeatedly for the past 5, 6 years.
Right.
And it's at this point, it's not just one isolated incident. This is a pattern, a custom and practice of the county failing to properly train, failing to properly discipline, people within, these county and city agencies. And, they continue to violate people's constitutional rights, continue to engage in this public corruption. They do not get disciplined. And so it's a custom and practice at this point, instead of doing what is necessary to rid, these different departments from, these people engaging in this corruption. Instead, they're just trying to sweep it under the rug. One pretty clear example of that is the fact that Detective Churrasca and Samuel Martinez the attorney, the district attorney who lied to the justice court judge, as alleged in the complaint, and the cop who lied in the request to get the search warrant. Those are the two people that are involved in now the prosecution of Tommy Lee Provost, who is the man who was arrested afterwards.
Right.
What discipline did these people get for what they have done here? It's not as if, Wolfson was not aware. I mean, the motion, to get attorney's fees was filed. And these people are still involved in, a case that is, in the subsequent case.
Right.
And it's like you're putting at risk the prosecution of this other person, whether he may be guilty or not. I mean, there may be other, the continued, mistakes and intentional misrepresentations in the investigation. In that case, we don't know. But why are these people not being disciplined? Why is this, the custom and practice of these two institutions to sweep this stuff under the rug instead of addressing a serious problem within them? And that's essentially what we are alleging here, that the county is responsible because the county is not doing what is necessary to prevent this public corruption that has been going on for years now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to kind of add to that too. That sort of another example of how we feel that they are systematically sort of obstructing and hiding and deflecting these things is, when Metro received a valid court order forcing them or ordering them to turn over records into the alleged, into the FBI investigation, not even alleged, it was active FBI investigation, they flat refused. Just refused to provide those records. And if there's not a practice of cover up, why wouldn't they just turn it over? So we kind of brought that in as well.
Right. Let me ask you a question on that. Being that you have this case filed already in federal district court on Mr. Jesus Carvajal, when it gets to discovery, if it goes that far, are you going to be able to get documents relating to these other cases to support your case? Is that a possibility?
That is what we will be seeking.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we act, if as long as it's sufficiently pled, we get past the motion to dismiss, and then we would get discovery into those issues that are alleged in that. And we believe that the evidence of those those cases will show that this is occurring, and that the individuals that are doing this stuff are just not being disciplined. Instead, the department is coalescing around these bad actors and allowing them to continue to engage in this conduct. And instead of addressing it by either terminating them or disciplining them, they're just allowing them to continue to do this, and they're hiding it. And that's, an issue. I mean, that's a problem. It damages the entire justice system and the public's faith in the justice system when people in power such as this continue to do this stuff, and then try and sweep it under the rug. It undermines, the entire judicial process and the entire judicial system when they, continually do this stuff.
Right. I looked at the complaint briefly, and I also read in there that you brought up the Oceanfleming case. And Oceanfleming, in case people don't know, was a man, an alleged pimp, who was arrested and charged with like 17 counts for being a pimp and some other charges. And those cases were all dropped except for one case, which he was let out of jail for last year, I believe, on that.
That's correct.
But in that case, because I see it brought up in this case, the attorneys hired by Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, when he hired this law firm that represented the department, one of the attorneys actually said in court during one of the motions, the proceedings in the Oceanfleming case, that they did not want this alleged corrupt cop named Christopher Bouthman to testify because they knew, the attorney said this in court, that he would implicate other cops. And and I did a story on that, and a lot of, not only me as an ex-cop found that horrendous, but I got so many emails from people saying, wait a minute, would the attorney for the police department, who was hired by the sheriff, because he runs the police department, Joe Lombardo, he's the head of the LVMPD, hired a law firm to prevent the testimony of an alleged corrupt cop, because this attorney said in court, and it is in the court record, that they knew that if that cop testified, he would implicate other police officers, in essence, who have not even been brought up in the investigation. And what ended up happening was, to my knowledge, is Baughman ended up taking the fifth. But that was one of the biggest boatload of emails I got from people said, and I said it too in one of my stories, why would any police chief or sheriff not want to know if there's other corrupt cops on a police department and do what they did on this one? And again, Steve Wolfson, the attorney, the district attorney, went along with this because it was one of his ADAs who was prosecuting the case against Fleming to keep him in jail and stuff. So, yeah. Okay.
And so all those other cops that they said that this guy is going to implicate, they're all still working for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. The attorney, that was involved in that case, Liz Mercer, she is still there. I mean, it is just a flat out policy of when people within these agencies get caught engaging in serious misconduct, these, the leaders of these agencies just try to sweep it under the rug. They try to prevent, the public from discovering, what is going on. And, that is something that needs to get addressed. And, unfortunately, until, there are consequences for doing these kind of things, there will be lawlessness. And that's essentially what we have here. A lawless district attorney's office and a lawless, police department that, when people within their ranks violate the law, they just, instead of addressing the problem, they sweep it under the rug.
Right.
That's the problem.
So this case, in essence, could have far-reaching implications other than just Jesus's case, Mr. Carvajal's case.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it can.
And I don't know if you guys are aware, but I've been almost 2 years now, if not more. I've been doing the stories. I don't know if you're familiar with the Land Kaufman 2016 Unsolved Murders. And one of the big things that came out that I uncovered in that case was a text message that was sent to Connie Land, the mother of Sidney Land, one of the victims in the Unsolved Murders, which will be 4 years coming up in October, unsolved. It was a text message that was sent in 2017 by Las Vegas Metro homicide detective Mitchell Dorsch, who in essence told her in that text message, and I published that in multiple stories, that the case was basically botched and compromised because he's seen so many things that he's never seen before. So many things happened that him and his partner are left to pick up the pieces. And then he says those instances are well documented or chronicled. Chronicled was the word that he used. And to this day, Metro, numerous media requests that I had for a year and a half on that, to me, is to saying, how was a double homicide investigation compromised when your detective working the case, one of the two detectives, sends a text message to the mother of the dead girl, in essence saying, the case is botched up, but I can't tell you why, but so many things happen that I've never seen before, and I have them well chronicled. Now we have to pick up the pieces. So there's a lot of other stuff going on in that case also that I think may overlap with some of the stuff you talk about in this case. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. And we may seek, information on that as well. I mean, there are just so many examples now in the past few years that have demonstrated that there is some serious misconduct going on, and there does not appear to be a real, willingness within either agency to address it. Instead, they want their policy is to cover it up, and that's bad for justice in the state of Nevada in general.
No, I agree. Thank you for listening, folks. Coming up on episode number 9, more on Judge Melanie Andrus Tobiasen and the Land Kaufman murders.